Hello, welcome everyone to Sport Tech Daily's episode with David Harris. He's been involved in the Australian sport and sport tech industry now for over 20 years. So thanks for taking the time, David. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Good, thanks. Apologies if I've got screaming kids in the background somewhere, like a lot of people at the moment. I'm doing the work from home thing, but in my industry, I'm a little bit more used to it.
No worries at all. Look, that's completely fine. I think I mentioned to you, we've only launched a couple of weeks ago and we're sort of very much getting used to this ourselves. So look, appreciate your time, David.
Great.
Awesome. And look, we were speaking about this just before we started recording, but I mentioned, your background. You've transitioned from the sporting world to consulting to back to sport and then esport. You've kind of done it all in this space. It sounds like a really wild ride. Tell us about your background.
Yeah, I always like to take on a new challenge. I was originally in sports medicine, so I was lucky enough to work with a lot of sort of major sports teams and codes around the world. I've sort of been in Australian sport and had 11 years over in the UK. In between, I was with the Sri Lanka cricket team. They've had a bit of experience in Premier League football clubs, football league clubs, rugby, county cricket. But after about 10 years in sports medicine, I felt like I'd done everything I wanted to achieve in that space, but I saw a lot of opportunities to do things better in sports business world. So I did the MBA at Oxford and then moved across into a number of startups. Did some traditional consulting for a while with Boston Consulting Group and Gemba, which is a sport and entertainment consultancy. And then my last real job, in inverted commas, I was a general manager at National Rugby League before I went out in 2016 to start Guinevere Capital, which was a sports investment business at the time. And since then, we've pivoted all in on eSports, which is quite an exciting space at the moment.
Awesome. All right. Well, look, we'll get into esports in a second, but your roles at Gemba Group and the NRL, it seems like what you're doing at the moment, that would have had a pretty large influence on your career and your skill set. Can you tell us a bit more about those roles?
Yeah, I think every role you take is a step on a journey, and you take something from them all to move into your next endeavour. So Gemba is a sport and entertainment consultancy, very much data driven. It's got an insights division, a marketing and strategy. So I was sort of leading the strategy in the Sydney office. It was great because I got to work with a lot of different sporting organisations, bodies, etc. They did a lot of work with the Australian Sports Commission at the time. So it was good to get a broader skill set, I guess, and experience. So we worked in sort of stadium development proposals and participation programs. It was a really mixed bag, which is fantastic. And then, one of my main projects was actually with the NRL. And then effectively ended up cutting out the middleman and becoming a general manager there. But it was a really interesting time to be at the NRL. We'd just done a major sports rights deal, and then it was how we were applying that funds to I guess increase the sustainability of the game. And it's really, really interesting now, obviously 5, 6, 7 years later, where we're in the situation that we are now, and that rainy day, people may think it doesn't come, but they generally do come around. So it's it's interesting now looking back on what we're doing then, and there's obviously been lots of twists and turns along the way, but at the time there was a growth and innovation fund trying to invest some of the broadcasts into projects that would really enhance the long-term sustainability of the game. So one of my major projects at the time was a membership program,
Right.
about 228,000 members to 330,000 members across the league, and read a lot of business cases around that. And sort of membership is that really engaged fan base and sort of those recurring revenue streams. And so I was very passionate about that, and we did a lot of other projects. We had a reality show called The Rookie, which was again trying to get away from doing the standard 30-second ads to doing something a little bit more in the long form content and sort of the reality space. And a lot of the digital projects there. But I was a general manager of marketing, content, and digital originally, and then spent a bit of time in club and state services, and then eventually in the commercial department. But I was there for 2.5 years, which in the NRL is quite a long time. But it was a fantastic experience. But by the end of that, I'd a lot of my work was club facing, and I sort of got sick of telling clubs how they should be running their business and getting ignored. So I thought it was time to put my money where my mouth was and really try and start investing in launching and running my own sports organisations, I guess, and esports.
Right. Excellent. Okay. And how did the transition to esports come about?
I saw it as almost like a competitive threat when I was at the NRL, but since then, yeah, I think everyone has an aha moment when they scratch the surface and see the numbers in esports. But yeah, we were looking to try and invest in some fairly large traditional sports organisations in Australia, and then we just bought an esports team almost as a side project at the time. But we saw what was happening everywhere else in the world and didn't think Australia was going to be on a different tangent. And we were sort of the first group at that time to come from the outside to invest in esports. And that was 2016. So obviously it was a bit of a leap of faith back then, but now 3-4 years down the track, it's proven to be quite a shrewd move. And from that initial investment, we now have sort of 4 or 5 teams in Australia, infrastructure at the Sydney Cricket Ground with the eSports High Performance Centre, and then have replicated that model on the other side of the world over in the UK with a facility at Twickenham Rugby Stadium and investment in Excel eSports, which is a team in the League of Legends European Championships over there.
Right. Okay. And it's funny when I've very recently come across esports. Like I've heard the term, I've understood the bigger picture, but if I ever try to explain it to someone, they're just like, "Isn't that just watching video games?" Like, you just hear really sort of very rookie or amateur response to what esports is about. So, I guess from a commercial sense, can you give us a really sort of high level understanding of the landscape of esports? Just like traditional sports would have their players, their coaches, the fans that come to the games. How does it work in esports land?
Yeah, it's hard to get your head around until you actually go to one of these events or become part of the ecosystem. It does seem crazy turning up to a stadium to watch people just watch video games, but my view is once you go to one of these events, the atmosphere is unbelievable. It's right up there with any of the traditional sports events in the world I've been to, and I've been to a lot. It's
Right.
just that shared experience of whether it's basketball, tiddlywinks, or computer games happening in the middle. When something good happens, everyone cheers. When someone messes up, everyone holds their head. There's fans of one side or the other. It gets quite parochial, far too reliant on big broadcast deals with either the cable TV companies or linear television with advertising, and with all the cord cutting that's happening and all the advertising revenue that's dropping off in those traditional spaces. I think sports going to have to pivot into the esports model where we have a mass reach through the digital channels that it's broadcast out on, but beneath those broadcast deals and distributions from the governing bodies, the other revenue streams are very similar. Sponsorship happens in both traditional sports and esports. As merchandise, you can buy your caps and your hoodies or your jerseys just like you can in traditional sports, but also has digital merchandise within the game. So our IP can be bought by players in the game to dress up their characters or their champions in our IP. There's membership and subscriptions, and then there's prize money in game day, and some of the prize money is huge in esports. There's one famous event called the International, which I think had a prize pool of 28 million last year. So, it's big business, although very dangerous to build a business model around winning and losing.
Right. And can you tell us about what you're doing with esports High Performance Centre? There's Excel Interactive and the company you mentioned in Sydney, Genevieve Capital.
Yeah. So Guinevere Capital is basically our investment brand that sits over the top. There's a few different companies, but so Guinevere Capital is almost we're not a VC or a PE company as such, but I guess we're the investors, but we're very hands-on in our investments, and then work with portfolio companies. One of which being the eSports High Performance Centre, which is a facility within the Sydney Cricket Ground. We've been through 3 iterations of it, but our whole model is bringing together the traditional sports world and esports world through performance and commercialization. So it's a physical facility, but it's also an umbrella where our programs sit, where we try to integrate everything from sports psychology to nutrition, etc., analytics, performance. And then Excel Interactive was the original company. It's now Excel eSports, which is a UK team. So that was a sort of a lower tier team when we bought them, but we managed to go through a process and get them into the League of Legends European Championships, which is one of the big franchise leagues over there, which I think is public knowledge that it's a €10 million buy-in. So it was some significant fundraising and a significantly larger operation than what we do in Australia. But We've got some great private equity partners in the J&J group over there, and yeah, it's a really exciting space to be in, and it's just that, I guess, that step up. There's so much investment going into it that the level is so much higher.
Right. And within Australia, and look, I'm going to dumb it down a little bit because I'm assuming a lot of the people that end up watching this video would not know too much about esports. So I guess in terms of what's sort of physically around in the esports community in Sydney and in Australia, when you say the company that you've got that's physically located at, near the SCG or in the SCG, what numbers are we talking about? Like how many people would be involved with the physical operation?
We've probably got about 30 people, including players, sort of involved in our operation at the moment, and
Right.
so some of them are full time in the SCG facility. A lot of them are players in some of the smaller titles or less well backed titles are actually spread out all over Australia and New Zealand. In fact, we have some international players as well, which is great. I guess you've got the combination of, we have been moving to sort of physical studio and stadium events, etc. But with the current situation, we're very much winding back to the model to where we were a couple of years ago, and so everyone can sort of participate online. So yeah, we have similar to a traditional sports team. We have our performance staff, we have our coaches and our analysts. We've got a marketing staff, we've got the social media, the videographers, etc.
Right.
And then we've got the sort of the commercial staff who are trying to sell sponsorships, etc. So yeah, the makeup is very similar, and obviously we've got our player roster as well. So it's
Sure.
yeah, there's a similar structure to a traditional sports organisation, and yes, we have a home base in Sydney Cricket Ground for our Australian operations, and over in Twickenham in UK for our UK Play Excel.
Yeah, excellent. All right. And look, obviously coronavirus, it's the topic on everyone's mind at the moment. You've worked in both sport, esports. How do you think it'll impact both industries in the next sort of 6 to 12 months?
It's going to change things a lot. It's fairly evident at the moment that it's putting a lot of stress on the traditional sports industry. There's force majeure clauses in a lot of the contracts that the traditional sports teams have with or organisations, governing bodies have with the broadcasters, which is one of the major sources of revenue, but also with the sponsors. So yeah, as soon as that money dries up, then it's putting a lot of stress on the governing bodies. But it's not just traditional sports. There's many businesses out there, but sport, just like anything else, is a business, and I think it's going to be a very tough time. Again, if it just offer a few weeks, we can quite easily weather that storm, I believe. But my view is, yeah, looking at 3 to 6 months at least, and that means you're missing an entire season, which
Yeah.
again strips a lot of revenue out. So yeah, I think some sports out there probably had an unsustainable model, and we're just living hand to mouth, and it shows that when the tough times comes, it's yeah, I think this will be actually an opportunity potentially to reset a lot of business models, I guess, out of necessity, unfortunately now. But yeah, I think traditional sports is going to have a tough time. Esports, obviously, in the short term, it's creating a lot of headaches, but I think it's basically back up and running with a lot of the leagues now. So it's actually a huge opportunity as the only show in town at the moment, pretty much. So you look at the viewership numbers up 25-30% at the moment. There's a lot of broadcasters with gaps in their scheduling. There's a lot of sponsors who have paid for assets that are no longer there. So this is almost a chance for esports to step into the mainstream. And to be honest, its numbers have been up there for a while, but it's sort of been an education or awareness type thing. But at the moment, with a real gap in the market, this could be an opportunity for esports to really try and crack that mainstream audience and those mainstream broadcasters and brands.
Right. And for people that are, looking to crack into the esports market in Australia, just like I said earlier, I think I think a lot of people are aware of, maybe just aware of what esports is, and aware of some of the numbers around how crazy the numbers are in terms of viewership and sort of, prize winnings available. But I think it sometimes doesn't hit home that, hey, there's a realistic opportunity to actually work in this space. So for people that are looking to get into this industry, either full time or part time, whether it's for their 9 to 5 jobs or from an investment or ownership opportunity, what avenues are available in Australia currently?
It's evolving rapidly. So we were a first mover probably 3-4 years ago, and it was much easier back now. Then now basically most teams are owned by, in the big leagues, are owned by a sport and entertainment group or have some backers. So, but yeah, I think everyone thinks esports is probably bigger than it is in the short term, but underestimates how big it is in the long term. So
Right.
everyone's saying I want to work in esports. Like, there's not a lot of salaries out there to pay, particularly for senior people. But yeah, as with anything, whether it's traditional sports or esports, the key is actually to get in there and have a go and try and find some internships or some part-time opportunities. I always give the advice: make sure you're good at something, whether it's sport or esports. Saying I want to work in sports, I want to work in esports. There's many roles there. Like, are you a graphic designer, social media, or a strength and conditioning coach? It's actually working some sort of functional skill set that you're good at, and it helps to be jack of all trades and be able to do a lot of stuff. But you need to be good at something that's actually adding value. But
Yeah.
yeah, my advice is, yeah, just there's plenty of voluntary and opportunities out there, whether it's with sort of tournament providers once this current crisis stops, and there's live events are back on, or there's plenty of teams out there. But the great thing about esports is you've always only need just 5 guys that are pretty good at playing a computer game, and all of a sudden you can create an esports team. And then back in the day, there was those rags Twitcher stories of sort of winning your way up through the ranks, and all of a sudden being in the big leagues. But I said for the bigger esports franchises at the moment, or the bigger esports leagues are now becoming sort of closed environments. But there are plenty of other games out there where you can get involved quite easily. I think esports is like sports. There's AFL, there's NRL, there's cricket, but there's also badminton, table tennis,
Yeah.
BMX racing. There's a huge diverse range of esports out there. Some of them bigger than others, but there's always a place where you can find some opportunities.
Right. Okay. And for people, I'm just going to talk about Sydney and Australia specifically, but again, for people that are looking to learn more about the industry, build their networks, and ideally look to start getting work in the industry, what are some resources that you think would be a good starting point? Like whether it's podcasts, meetups, or e-meetups now, any sort of forums, what would you recommend?
I think you can get head around the business aspects of the space. There's some really good global publications, TEO, the Esports Observer, and ESI, Esports Insider. So it would be really good to sort of read them. They've got social media and they've got sort of websites, etc. It's really interesting articles about the business of sports globally to get your head around, I guess, the ecosystem. Locally, I'm a member of the EGAA, the Esports Games Association of Australia. There's one of the board members, Chris Smith, has a sort of a podcast and a social media group, BIG, Business and Gaming. It'd be worth checking out. There's a bit of a community there, and there's a few other similar things around. Usually these bodies have a conference again, or meetups. And sometimes it's just there's a few gaming bars around there. Sometimes they're as casual as just a few drinks and a speaker. Sometimes they're full on conferences, obviously on hold at the moment, but I know the plans are to hold some more this year. So yeah, I think it's just getting along to some of these mixer events is worthwhile. And there's a few community groups out there on Facebook, etc. I guess each game sort of has its own community, so I just follow all the Riot Oceania, who runs League of Legends, the EA Sports, the Rainbow Six, whatever it may be. It's worth just following all these things on social media and actually, just following what's happening. And then everyone in the industry is actually quite approachable. So if you see someone who's doing something cool, just feel free to reach out and say hi. And in non-quarantine times, have a coffee. But if not, everyone's always just happy to have a bit of back and forward, because I think everyone's very much all boats rise with the tide in this space, and particularly Oceania as being a sort of a developing region. Most people are fairly generous with their time to have a chat, and as I say, just try and help relieve a headache, whatever that may be, by offering to help out with something and get your foot in the door and use that to build your skill set, your understanding, your CV, and then when the opportunities come, you'll be front and center.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, and I guess that brings me to something I was wondering before. How does the Australian and the Oceania environment in esports compared to some of the other, I guess, global markets, and who are some of the market leaders in this space?
Yeah, I think the gap's actually widening at the moment, which in some ways is a little bit sad, but in other ways it's actually just shows how far the industry's coming. So if you look at all these massive numbers, China is huge, and as with anything else, they've just got so much scale over there. So yeah, there's reportedly over 100 million people watching the World Champs last year, and a fair chunk of that would have been within China. So
Well,
so yeah, I think China's been a bit of a powerhouse. Now Europe is really sort of starting to challenge them. South Korea was sort of the original esports region. So South esports have been in South Korea for over 20 years. So it's huge there, but I think China has almost surpassed them just because of their scale. And now Europe and North America are both really starting to get a lot of investment in space and getting excited about it because they actually have I guess the traditional sports investors and infrastructure and model over there. So they're now starting to enter the esports space, and there's a real rivalry between Europe and North America. I think North America is getting a lot more investment, but Europe is actually performing significantly better in a number of the main titles. So yeah, it's become genuinely global. And then I guess places like India and the Middle East haven't completely taken off, but they're sort of probably that next wave of regions that are going to come through and be relevant. And esports is also massive in South America, but probably not as many brand dollars or as much investment over there, but still a huge following and participation base.
right. Okay. And I guess the other thing I was going to allude to there was in terms of the global numbers, where do you see, are there any opportunities for Australia in terms of, partnering with a lot of global organizations, or is the fact that we're so far away and our internet speeds, this is just what I've heard, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Keith, but is that a key factor, the internet speeds and our ability to sort of stay up to speed with a lot of the other countries in the world?
Yeah, it's a challenge. Like our model is we've got a lot of partnerships and work with a lot of people around the world. But yeah, part of it obviously our IT infrastructure isn't amazing, but it is more the isolation, the fact that and it's not a technology problem; it's sort of a speed of light problem that the signals
Right.
can't get from here to other countries and back fast enough for our pro players to be able to train and practice against the best pro players around the world. So we quite often send our players off to boot camps. We'll send them to Korea for a few weeks or a month to train over there, because from Australia, just because you're so far removed, you can't really play against them from over here. So yeah,
Right.
I think like many things, the isolation for Australia, sometimes it can be a advantage in situations like the moment. But it's tough for esports, and a lot of our players are now going overseas. We're sort of getting that dynamic of sort of the A League versus the English Premier League. So I think there's a mass exodus of players from League of Legends from the local league, the Oceania Pro League. Last year, I think we had about 9 players and coaches get abroad. But I think it's a strength that we show our player development, and that we are developing world-class players. It's just the economics mean they can make a lot more money overseas, and the standard is slightly higher over there. But at the same time, there's a lot of games that have basically a world championships or sort of international events where Australia gets a spot. So if you're a solid team in Australia, it's much easier to sort of qualify and beat the local teams to get there, as opposed to somewhere like Europe or South Korea, where it's a hell of a lot more competitive.
Right. Okay. And I guess just to wind up, from a personal point of view, what are the sports or esports that you're most interested in and are keen to follow, I guess, over the next sort of few months?
So personally, League of Legends, that was the first I invested into, and yeah, we've previously had the Direwolves in Australia and Excel over in the UK, and I actually play that myself. I don't get to too many games here because it really is time burgle you, and yeah, I tell my wife I need to understand the product, but I don't play a lot of other games. But yeah, League of Legends, I'm very passionate about it. It's one of those ones a bit more strategic. And right, so League of Legends is made by Riot Games, and Overwatch is made by Activision Blizzard, who also make Call of Duty. So they're sort of the big franchised esports leagues there at the moment. And then there's Valve, which is a game publisher that makes a lot of different games, and Counter-Strike and Dota 2 are probably their big titles across the esports world. They're the big games. And then you got sports simulators. EA Sports has EA Sports FIFA, and then there's NBA 2K. So at a high level, they're all the big titles at the moment. And then big games that aren't as big as esports is Fortnite, and there's a lot at the moment that Apex Legends, etc., which people are probably hearing about. So it's just like saying what sport you're in. It's sort of horses for courses.
Yeah.
Different people like are into different things. But yeah, personally, it's the MOBAs, the mass online battle arenas, such as League of Legends, that I'm passionate about, rather than the fighting games or the first-person shooters.
Awesome. All right, cool. Well, look, thank you so much for your time, David. It was really interesting personally, and I'm sure the followers will love listening to this as well.
Great. Thanks for having me chat.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to check out more of our content, go to sporttechdaily.com or follow us on social media across Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram.